Chapter 10. 1. She woke in a blizzard, or such was her first impression. Above her, a perfect whiteness, snow on snow. She was tucked up in snow, pillowed in snow. The blankness was sickening. It seemed to fill up her throat and eyes. She raised her hands in front of her face. They smelled of an unfamiliar soap whose perfume was harsh. Now she began to focus. The walls, the pristine sheets, the medication beside the bed. A hospital. She called out for help. Hours or minutes later, she wasn't sure which. It came in the form of a nurse who simply said, "You're awake," and went to fetch her superiors. She told them nothing when they came. She had decided in the time between the nurse's disappearance and reappearance with the doctors that this was not a story she was ready to tell. Tomorrow, maybe, she might find the words to convince them of what she'd seen. But today, if she tried to explain, they would stroke her brow and tell her to hush her nonsense, condescend to her and try to persuade her she was hallucinating. If she pressed the point, they'd probably sedate her, which would make matters worse. What she needed was time to think. All of this she'd worked out before they arrived, so that when they asked her what had happened, she had her lies ready. It was all a fog, she told them. She could barely remember her own name. It will come back in time, they reassured her. And she replied meekly that she supposed it would. Sleep now, they said, and she told them she'd be happy to do just that, and yawned. They withdrew then. "Oh yes," said one of them as he was about to go. "I forgot." He brought Frank's box from his pocket. "You were holding on to this," he said, "when you were found. We had the devil's own job getting it out of your hand. Does it mean anything to you?" She said it didn't. "The police have looked at it. There was blood on it, you see. Maybe yours, maybe not." He approached the bed. "Do you want it?" he asked her, then added, "It has been cleaned." "Yes," she replied. "Yes, please." "It may jog your memory," he told her, and put it down on the bedside table. "What are we gonna do?" Julia demanded for the 100th time. The man in the corner said nothing, nor was there any interpretable sign on his ruin of a face. "What did you want with her anyway?" she asked him. "You've spoiled everything."
Spoiled? You don't know the meaning of spoiled.
She swallowed her anger. His brooding unnerved her. "We have to leave, Frank." He threw a look across at her. White-hot ice. "They'll come looking. She'll tell them everything."
Maybe.
"You don't care?" The bandaged lump shrugged.
Yes, of course. But we can't leave, sweetheart.
Sweetheart. The word mocked them both, a breath of sentiment in a room that had known only pain.
I can't face the world like this.
He gestured at his face.
Can I? Look at me! Can I?
No.
No.
He went back to perusing the floor.
I need a skin, Julia.
A skin?
Then maybe we can go dancing together. Isn't that what you want?
He spoke of both dancing and death with equal nonchalance, as though one carried as little significance as the other. It calmed her, hearing him talk that way. "How?" she said at last, meaning, how can a skin be stolen, but also, how will our sanity survive?
There are ways,
said the flayed face, and blew her a kiss. Had it not been for the white walls, she might have never picked up the box. Had there been a picture to look at, a vase of sunflowers, or a view of pyramids, anything to break the monotony of the room, she would have been content to stare at it and think. But the blankness was too much. It gave her no handhold on sanity. So she reached across to the table beside the bed and picked up the box. It was heavier than she remembered. She had to sit up in bed to examine it. There was little enough to see, no lid that she could find, no keyhole, no hinges. If she turned it over once, she turned it 100 times, finding no clue to how it might be opened. It was not solid, she was certain of that. So logic demanded that there be a way into it. But where? She tapped it, shook it, pulled and pressed it, all without result. It was not until she rolled over in bed and examined it in the full glare of the lamp that she discovered some clue as to how the box was constructed. There were infinitesimal cracks in the sides of the box, where one piece of the puzzle abutted the next. They would have been invisible, but that a residue of blood remained in them, tracing the complex relation of the parts. Systematically, she began to feel her way over the sides, testing her hypothesis by pushing and pulling once more. The cracks offered her a general geography of the toy. Without them, she might have wandered the 6 sides forever. But the options were significantly reduced by the clues she'd found. There were only so many ways that the box could be made to come apart. After a time, her patience was rewarded. A click, and suddenly one of the compartments was sliding out from beside its lacquered neighbors. Within, there was beauty, polished surfaces which scintillated like the finest mother of pearl, colored shadows seeming to move in the gloss. And there was music too. A simple tune emerged from the box, played on a mechanism that she could not yet see. Enchanted, she delved further. Though one piece had been removed, the rest did not come readily. Each segment presented a fresh challenge to fingers and mind, the victories rewarded with a further filigree added to the tune. She was coaxing the 4th section out by an elaborate series of turns and counter-turns when she heard the bell. She stopped working and looked up. Something was wrong. Either her wary eyes were playing tricks or the blizzard white walls had moved subtly out of true. She put down the box and slipped out of bed to go to the window. The bell still rang, a solemn tolling. She drew back the curtain a few inches. It was night and windy. Leaves migrated across the hospital lawn. Moths congregated in the lamplight. Unlikely as it seemed, the sound of the bell wasn't coming from outside. It was behind her. She let the curtain drop and turned back into the room. As she did so, the bulb in the bedside light guttered like a living flame. Instinctively, she reached out for the pieces of the box. They and these strange events were intertwined somehow. As her hand found the fragments, the light blew out. She was not left in darkness, however, nor was she alone. There was a soft phosphorescence at the end of the bed, and in its folds a figure. The condition of its flesh beggared her imagination. The hooks, the scars, yet its voice when it spoke was not that of a creature in pain.
"It's called the Lemarchand Configuration,"
it said, pointing at the box. She looked down. The pieces were no longer in her hand, but floating inches above her palm. Miraculously, the box was reassembling itself without visible aid, the pieces sliding back together as the whole construction turned over and over. As it did so, she caught fresh glimpses of the polished interior and seemed to see ghosts' faces twisted as if by grief or bad glass howling back at her. Then all but one of the segments was sealed up, and the visitor was claiming her attention afresh.
The box is a means to break the surface of the real. A kind of invocation by which we Cenobites can be notified.
Who?
You did it in ignorance. Am I right?
Yes.
It's happened before. But there's no help for it. No way to seal the schism until we take what's ours.
This is a mistake.
Don't try to fight. It is quite beyond your control. You have to accompany me.
She shook her head. She'd had enough of bullying nightmares to last her a lifetime. I won't go with you. Damn you, I won't. As she spoke, the door opened. A nurse she didn't recognize, a member of the night shift presumably, was standing there. Did you call out? Kirsty looked at the Cenobite, then back at the nurse. They stood no more than a yard apart.
She doesn't see me, nor hear me. I belong to you, Kirsty, and you to me.
No. Are you sure? I thought I heard... Kirsty shook her head. It was lunacy. All lunacy. You should be in bed. You'll catch your death. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Please go back to sleep.
We'd better go. Leave them to their patchwork, hey? Such depressing places.
You can't do this. It moved towards her. Nevertheless, a row of tiny bells, depending from the scraggy flesh of its neck, tinkled as it approached. The stink it gave off made her want to heave. Wait!
No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
The box! Don't you want to know where I got the box?
Not particularly.
Frank Cotton. Does that name mean anything to you? Frank Cotton.
Oh, yes. We know Frank.
He solved the box too, am I right?
He wanted pleasure until we gave it to him, and then he squirmed.
If I took you to him?
He's alive then?
Yes, very much alive.
And you're proposing what? That I take him back instead of you?
Yes, yes, why not? Yes. The Cenobite moved away from her, and the room sighed.
I am tempted. But perhaps you're cheating me. Perhaps this is a lie. Perhaps you want to buy time.
I know where he is, for God's sake. He did this to me. She presented her slashed arms for its perusal.
If you're lying, if you're trying to squirm your way out of this,
I'm not.
Deliver him alive to us then.
She wanted to weep with relief.
Make him confess to us, and maybe we won't tear your soul apart.